Hi, for my 15-112 term project, I made Shui a Chinese learning program. So there are two main sections to this program. The first section is word recognition, which is um, learning Chinese vocabulary, and the second section, phrase translation, where the user practices translating English phrases into Chinese ones. So let's not go through the first section of the program, word recognitions. So let's look at time, for example. So how this works is that a Chinese word is displayed, which starts off at an easy difficulty level, and as the user answers questions correct, the words get harder and harder, and vice versa if the person gets questions wrong. So how I made this work was I constructed an AI in the form of a weighted random variable, and this random variable takes in a few metrics. The first one being the total number of questions the users answered correct and wrong to ensure that eventually the difficulty of the questions reaches or stabilizes at a level which suits the user. And secondly, the main metric that I use is an understanding metric, and I constructed this using a classification and a regression tree constructed based on two metrics. The first one being the time taken for the user to answer the question, and second, whether or not the user answers the question correctly or not. So basically, this ensures that if the user takes a long time to answer a question correctly, the incremented difficulty is less. A weighted variable also plateaus as the difficulty of the words get harder and harder, and this is to ensure that the difficulty of the questions, that the incremented difficulty reduces as the words get harder, so that the user has more practice with challenging vocabulary. Another good feature of this is that the options that come up have a relevance to the topic from which this Chinese word comes from. So this basically just ensures that this learning is not like a randomized trivial multiple choice quiz, but instead does pose challenging questions for the user. If I've answered this question wrong again, the words gotten easier too, but by a lower amount because of the nature of the plateau within the program. So second section of the program. So to generate these random sentences, I constructed a 3-gram Markov chain model from scratch. So now let's look at what happens when we type in a translation of this. So here we have Jordan's got a giant. So Jordan's got a giant. So we have this phrase here. So if we take the Chinese translation of this phrase, so tkinter doesn't let us type Chinese in directly. So if we copy and paste this in, it tells you how to hit enter to paste this into the answer box. So we put this into the answer box, and now we submit the answer. So this program is based on the blue model of translation, and how this works is that it works in a similar n-gram model, but it checks the accuracy of a given translation. So this ensures that even though translations may not be perfect, if they're close enough, like we see here, the user still knows that they have a translation that is accurate and close to the actual answer. So now let's say that we move on to the next word. Once again, we have a phrase here. If we choose not to submit an answer to this phrase, a dialog box comes up which tells us that we did not answer the question, and we hit OK to continue and move on to the next phrase. So if we move back to the original starting screen, the last section of this program is the learning report section, where the user is just able to see how they've been doing over time. And there are 4 different graphs that are generated. The first one is the number of questions they've answered correct based on the topics, the number of questions they've answered wrong based on the topics, the time taken, and the frequency with which they've taken these times to answer the question, which is a part of the understanding metric that we constructed from the binary tree ML model. And from this we see, like, we have a cutoff from which a person's understood or not understood a question, And based on this, it also displays the number of questions the person understood and the number of questions the person has not understood. So that is my 15.112 term project. I hope you enjoyed learning about it.